My name is Jasmine, and I have a story that made me question everything I thought I knew about the place I grew up in. When I was in 10th grade, something happened that shattered my sense of safety and changed the way I saw my hometown forever. Our high school was built on the site of an old orphanage. It wasn't just some creepy urban legend, it was real. My grandmother lived there until she was 16. I grew up hearing her vague memories, fragmented stories about her time there, usually ending with her saying she didn't remember much. But there was always one phrase she repeated. That place was never meant to take care of children. It was meant to take something from them. I didn't understand what she meant. It stuck with me for weeks. Then one rainy afternoon, I was rummaging through dusty old boxes in her attic, just out of curiosity. That's when I found it, a black and white photo cracked at the corners of the orphanage. A group of children stood in front of the main building. Some smiling, some staring blankly. Among them, I recognized a younger version of my grandmother. And someone else. In the back row, standing a little too straight, a little too stiff, was our school's current principal, Mr. Howard. I froze. He looked almost the same, just younger. When I showed my grandmother the picture, she grew quiet. Her hands trembled slightly as she took it from me. That's when she finally opened up. She said Mr. Howard was always the golden boy at the orphanage, polite, helpful, overly obedient. But there was something unnatural about him. Something rehearsed. Starting around his 14th birthday, a man in expensive dark suits began visiting him regularly. No one knew who he was. He never spoke to the staff or other children. He'd just sit with Mr. Howard for hours at a time. After these visits, children started disappearing. The staff always smiled and told the other kids that those children had been adopted. But my grandmother swore she never once saw any parents come through the orphanage gates. Just one day a child was there, the next gone. I got obsessed. I needed to know more. I started digging through old public records about the orphanage. Weirdly, every single teacher who ever worked there stayed until the orphanage closed, no turnover for decades. Eventually, I tracked down a former staff member through a family friend. She was elderly, confused, but she had kept a diary. She asked me not to share too much, and I'll honor that. But here's what I can say. Her journal described how children would whisper about voices in the walls, how certain rooms were always locked, and how they were forbidden to ever ask questions about the disappearances. One entry chilled me to the bone. It said, 11 children went to sleep tonight. 10 woke up. When we asked where Lydia was, Miss Carmichael just smiled and said she was finally chosen. That phrase, finally chosen, echoed in several other entries. It sounded less like adoption, and more like a ritual. I told all this to my best friend, Chloe. Her reaction shocked me. She told me Mr. Howard was her grandfather. She'd always found him off, cold, calculating. She agreed to sneak into his old study in their family's estate, which hadn't been touched in years. The house was huge. Old money. Stained glass, creaky staircases, and portraits that followed you with their eyes. In his office, we searched every drawer, every book spine, every cabinet. Then Chloe noticed a small chest under a shelf, locked tight. She knew where her family kept spare keys. We found one. Inside the chest was a single notebook, bound in cracked leather, thick with dust. We looked at each other and opened it. What we read didn't feel real. It was Mr. Howard's journal. He wrote about how, in his teen years, he was recruited by a group that operated under the guise of a charity but was actually something far darker. He described them only as the Order. His job at first was simple: earn the trust of the other children, gather information, report who was ready. He said he was paid handsomely for this and later rewarded with land, the very estate we were standing in. He didn't describe in detail what happened to the children who were chosen. He claimed he never knew. But he wrote that he always knew they weren't going to new families. The journal ended with a horrifying line. I still hear their footsteps at night, but I've learned not to answer the door. We sat in silence for a long time. Neither of us knew what to do. This was bigger than us. And if this secret had been buried for over 60 years, maybe someone had been making sure it stayed buried. We made a pact not to tell anyone. Even now, years later, I still feel sick remembering it. But sometimes I wonder, how many others know? And how many more children disappeared before the orphanage finally shut down? Story 2. My name is Ashley, and when I was 17, something happened that made me fear silence, eye contact, and even being alone in my own room. It started like any other story about high school, new semester, new teachers, new faces. But one of those faces became a nightmare I never expected. His name was Colin Marks, and he joined our junior class mid-September. No one knew much about him. He moved from somewhere out of state, no social media, no photos. His attendance file was thin. He was pale, lanky, always in the same faded green hoodie and jeans, even on hot days. He sat alone, never raised his hand, didn't talk. He had this habit of constantly scribbling in a little black notebook, head down, earbuds in. First, I didn't notice him at all. I was busy with cheer practice, applying for colleges, spending time with my boyfriend Jake. I was one of those girls everyone knew, not out of ego, but just because I was involved in everything. Student council, yearbook, homecoming. But Colin? He drifted behind the edges like a shadow. That changed when I found the note. It was fourth period. I opened my locker, and a folded piece of paper slipped out and landed at my feet. I thought it was from a friend at first, maybe a joke or a doodle. But it wasn't. I saw you in the hallway after lunch today. You smiled at someone, not me, but it still made my day. I hope one day you'll smile like that because of me. No name. Just handwriting that was unnervingly neat. Almost practiced. The note gave me goosebumps. It wasn't threatening, not really. But it felt too personal. I hadn't smiled at anyone specific that day after lunch, at least I didn't think I had. But someone had been watching me closely enough to notice. The next day, another note appeared. Your laugh during third period makes me feel calm. Like nothing else matters when I hear it. I stopped laughing in third period after that. I didn't tell anyone right away. Felt too weird to bring up. Like I was overreacting. But the notes didn't stop. One of them said, I hate when you hang around Jake. He doesn't care about you. Not like I do. I see the real you. That's when fear started settling in. Whoever this was, they weren't just watching me casually. They were studying me. Tracking my patterns, listening to my conversations, making judgments about my relationship. At that point, I told Naomi, my best friend. We joked nervously about it, but even she looked uneasy. She started walking me to my classes more, staying closer. Then something happened that pushed everything over the edge. I had gym during sixth period. We weren't allowed to take our phones or bags in. I always left mine in the girls' locker room, zipped up tight. That day, after class, I found a note inside my backpack. I hadn't left it alone for more than 30 minutes. My heart dropped when I read, I saw you getting undressed. You're perfect. I would never hurt you. I just want to protect what's already mine. I nearly threw up. I ran to the counselor's office in tears. She took it seriously this time. The school reviewed locker room footage, but the hallway camera outside the gym had a glitch, of course it did, and caught nothing useful. They told me to stay aware and let them know if anything else happened. But Colin still showed up to class, still sat in the back, still stared. That weekend, I stayed over at Naomi's house. Her dad was a retired cop. When we told him everything, he didn't hesitate. He contacted a friend on the force and helped us push for a deeper investigation. That Monday, plainclothes officers came to the school. They searched Colin's locker. Empty. But then they checked his backpack. Inside, a pocket knife, several photos of me, some taken from angles that looked like they were from inside my house, and a printed map with my route home highlighted in red. He was arrested on the spot. But the worst part wasn't the arrest. It was what they found after. Turns out Colin had been staying with a distant aunt who rarely checked on him. In his bedroom, taped to the walls, were hundreds of photos of me. Most were grainy, zoomed-in shots from across the street or behind bushes. Some were printed from old social media posts I'd deleted years ago. Some were taken at night through windows. In his closet, they found a USB drive. On it were audio recordings, my voice recorded from God knows where. Talking, laughing, humming in the kitchen. They think he'd been planting small audio recorders near the school and maybe even near my home. There was even a photo of me sleeping. I had no idea how long he had been watching me. We still don't know how deep it went. He had pages of notes, times I left the house, when Jake visited, when I fought with my parents, what outfits I wore. He was charged with stalking, unlawful surveillance, and possession of illegal recordings. They say he'll be in juvenile detention until he's 21. After that, no one knows. His aunt moved away. No one's heard from him since. But sometimes when I walk home alone, I still feel like I'm being watched. Like someone is behind the curtain. Like a camera lens is pointed at my window. And sometimes I dream about that first note. I hope one day you'll smile like that because of me. Have you ever felt like someone at school knew too much about you? Watched but kept quiet? What would you do if you found personal notes with your name on them? Let's write in the comments, and don't forget to follow for new American stories from the lives of ordinary people.